My name is Eli Sabanroth, and I am a sociology major.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Eli's Data Tutorials. Today we're going to be going over how to build pivot charts and more specifically, pivot tables. Pivot tables are a great way to easily view and filter your data. This is especially important when you have large data sets with lots of columns, rows, and different values. To start off, we're going ahead and make sure that we're in the right worksheet. So let's ensure that we're in the sales data worksheet. You can see that down here on the tabs of different worksheets. Now that we know we're in the right worksheet, let's go ahead and create a new column called gross margin. In order to determine a gross margin, for each row, what we need to do is get the unit price minus the unit cost divided by the unit price again. So to do that, we can see that unit price is column P, unit cost is column Q. So knowing that, we'll go ahead and do equal signs, subtract the unit price, which is P2, minus unit cost, which is Q2, divided over the unit price again, P2 again. Now that we know that the row has this gross margin, in order to get all the other rows' gross margin, what we can do is select this little square on the bottom right. By double-clicking it, it'll provide us with all the gross margins for all the other rows. Now that we created the gross margin column, we can now create our pivot table. In order to do so, we need to go up to the top tabs where it says Insert, select that, select all our data from S all the way back down to A, and select Pivot Table here. From there, we'll choose New Worksheet and OK. As you can see, it created a new worksheet called Sheet 1. We'll rename this to Pivot Table. If you look to our right, you can see that there's a Pivot Table field. This is what we'll be using to create our pivot table. What we want from our pivot table is sales channels and columns. So we'll go over to sales channel, select that, drag that to columns. Ship date for rows. So go down to ship date, right here, bring that to rows. In order to fill this table, we need to put values in. The values we'll choose are gross margin, which we just created, and order quantity. Gross margin, bring the values, and order quantity. Perfect. So now that we have our table, let's do some tweaking. For gross margin, we want to have the average and for the number to have 2 decimal places. To do that, we're going to go over to the values field, go to gross margin, and this little arrow right here, we'll click it and select value field settings. From there, we can select average for the value field, and then number format to change the number here in number category to have 2 decimals. It already has it, so we're good, and we can just click OK. And click OK again. And as you can see, the gross margin changes to have 2 decimal places, which I already had, but also the averages for that. For the other value, order quantity, we want it to have commas and 0 decimal places. So again, just like before, we'll click the little arrow, value field settings. Since we want the sum, it's okay, we can leave that. Number format, number, we're going to use separator of commas, so check this box. And then this time, change decimal places down to 0. We're going to click OK, and click OK again. As you can see, there are no decimal places, and the numbers now have commas. For the rows, what we want to do is change it so it just only shows quarters. In order to do that, we're going to go over to the rows field, select years, and remove field. Scroll down to ship date, click the same little arrow, and remove field again. As you can see now, it has quarters, and those quarters can be broken down into months. Now that we've created our pivot table, we can now create pivot slicers. Pivot slicers are Now to create our pivot table, we can create pivot slicers. Slicers provide buttons that you can click to filter tables or pivot tables. In addition to quick filtering, slicers can also indicate the current filter state, which makes it easier to understand exactly what is currently being displayed. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and click anywhere in our pivot table, and then go up to the tab, Insert, and go over to Slicer. After clicking that, you can choose what slicers you want. For us, what we want are product and sales channel. So we'll select sales channel and product and go ahead and click OK. From there, you can see that product and sales channel has broken apart to slicers, and we can select what filters we want for each of those slicers. For product, we want rugs, so we'll go down to rugs. And for sales channel, we want in-store. Now that we've finished up making our slicers, we can go ahead and add a pivot chart. Pivot charts are excellent for visualizing pivot tables and seeing trends. So just like before, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the pivot table, go to Insert, and go over to Pivot Charts right here. You're going to click on that, and we want a clustered column chart. So we're going to go to Columns, select Clustered Column, and go down to OK. In order to see a trend, what we need to do is insert a trend line. This will make it easier for us to understand the trends that are going on in our chart. What we're going to do is go to one of the bars, right-click it, and go down to Add Trend Line. From there, you can see that from Q1 to Q4, there's been a positive growth trend. If you want to see how the trend line changes or how the chart changes, what you can do is you can change the filters over here in our slicers. For example, I click Sales Channel and change it to Online. And there you go. You've now learned how to build pivot tables, create pivot slicers, and visualize data using pivot charts and trend lines. With this, you are one step closer to becoming a data analyst. And what's a better way to end this tutorial than with a good joke? This one's a little advanced, but what did the underpaid data scientist say? I need a raise. That was a bad joke, but I hope you learned a lot from this tutorial and are encouraged to become a data analyst.